Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us again on Trial Talk Live. My name is Nancy McDonald, and I am introducing our speaker, Candace. Our Master Gardeners group has had the opportunity on 2 occasions to visit Candace's gardens when she hosted potlucks. We came away impressed with her creativity, her success with plants and design, and her genuine love of gardening. Today, she shares with us tips of starting overwintered Dahlias and Cannas to ensure success. Over to you, Candace.
Hi, everyone. So welcome to my garden. I think this picture is probably taken in October. There's some brown, black dirt here, so I think I maybe started taking out my Dahlias. So I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks. You can see the Dahlias are in the front here. And then I've got Cannas here up above the roof line. So let's get down to it. So Dahlias were named after Anders Dahl, and he was a student of Linnaeus. They come from Mexico. The first ones came to Europe in 1791, I think. And there are more than 42 different types, so shapes. There's dinner plates, cactuses, semi-cactuses, singles, and showies, and so many, many more. My favorite are the dinner plates. There's also pom-poms, the really round ones. I have never grown those. Here's a bouquet that I've made from dahlias out of my garden in the fall. My favorite is Manhattan. I just think that it's whimsical and carefree and just a gorgeous plant. They're not all this quite wild. It is listed as a dinner plate. This one looks almost more like it's almost a cactus. Another one that I really enjoy is Sukiyori, and this is a cactus variety, a white cactus. I've taken this picture at night so you can see just how it glows in the dark. So last fall, I started the process of keeping my tubers over winter by first cutting off the plants and leaving them in the ground for 3 or 4 days. That lets the tubers know that it's time to stop producing flowers, and they might even start producing a couple of eyes. And you can see I've done that with, here's another variety, and you can see that the tubers are different shapes. And I always keep, when I dig mine out of the ground, I make my piles, and I always keep a flower with each group of tubers so that I know which ones are which, because I find that that's one of the biggest challenges. Every once in a while, I'll get to the end of the process and I'm going, oh, I don't know which ones these are. And they never look as good in the garden if you get the purples next. You just have to make sure you always keep track of which one is which. Some people use a black marker and write on the tubers. That works just fine. I've tried using the little copper tags that you can bury and tie them onto the tubers. And that also will do it. These are nice, these are big clumps, and I don't have a lot of big storage. So I do divide in the fall. You can look online, and there are many different, there are as many different methods and how-tos. Every presentation that I looked at online, every website I went, every video I looked at, they did it differently. So today I'm talking about how I do it. I'm putting in some tips that I found while I was getting some reinforcement that I was doing it right. And so I will be adding those and some things that some experiments that I did this spring, and we'll see how it goes. So I take my tubers from there and I divide them. I didn't plan to do this talk until after I had divided mine last fall, so I don't have pictures of the division process, sort of. But this is what they look like this spring. I had a good food box. They're a great box to keep my dahlias in. They have this, it's a heavy cardboard box, and then it's got an insulated liner inside the box. Inside my good food box, I have my dahlias. I put them individually into these bags. I've used liquor store bags for years. But this year my husband said, well, why don't, these are nice. He said, why don't you use these flour and sugar bags? They're nice and they're heavy bags. So I thought, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So I used them this year and they worked very well. I will be doing that again. You notice I've written on the outside of all of the bags, what's inside the bags, and you can see the reflective paper on the insulation inside the bag. I do not have the perfect place to store my dahlias. I don't have any cold storage. I have, my house has a very warm crawl space. This year I stored them in the garage, and my garage doesn't usually freeze, but it did freeze 2 or 3 nights. So I got an old thermometer out there, so it's in Fahrenheit. So when the temperature went below 35, the tubers, the box came in the house. But most days most of this winter, it wasn't such a hard winter. Most days it was between, it was around 40, between 38 and 42 is where my garage sort of sat at. The dahlias were very happy there. So I have started my dahlias as early as the end of February. But that didn't really put me any further ahead. They still bloomed the middle of July, and when I started them the end of March, they bloomed the middle of July, and this year I started the beginning of April, and that's good enough. You don't need to babysit them for those extra 2 months. You're not going to get any more flowers or earlier flowers. At least I haven't here in Ottawa. So April 7th, it was just like Christmas. I opened up my parcels, my packages, and I dumped them out on the table. And this is what came out of one of my bags. Here they are. You can see even this is all one variety, and they are different shapes and different sizes, and that's okay. I have not stored the mothers. The tuber that I plant, so the tuber that you plant this year is the mother tuber, and all of the other tubers grow off of it, and the plant grows up out of it. In the fall, or if you're going to divide your tubers in the spring, you discard the mother tuber, and then you grow off the other ones. I discard them in the fall. They are more likely to rot from what I've read. So that keeps the health of my tubers. I think it keeps the health of my tubers better. You can see some of them are nice and plump. Some of them are a little bit dried out. That's okay. These ones might be bad. You see how they're all wrinkly. If when you touch them, you squeeze them, they're spongy. If they're dried out, if they're hard and crispy, they're definitely, nothing's going to happen. If they're spongy, they might be okay. They might not be okay. You can cut off the tails and see what color they are inside. And this one I've cut off, and you see how it's orange. There's nothing left there. That's bad. So that one's just going to go in the trash. What you want to see, what is good, are these eyes. So you can see on the tuber, dahlia tubers aren't like potato tubers. Potato tubers sprout and they make eyes all over the potato. Dahlia tubers are, I forget the word. They only sprout here at the tip of the tuber. So you need to keep your neck solid and whole. There can be a little bit of damage on the neck, but you certainly, if you cut your tuber off here, which is your first instinct when you're dividing them, you're not going to get anything because the only growth is here on the ends. So I'm showing you, so this is what you're looking for. You're looking for these little white eyes here. And there's another little guy there, right on the end. And you want to try and have a centimeter, this to be a centimeter long from the edge of the neck to the edge of the eye, where the eyes are. And here we've got more eyes. So I cut those off on April 7th. I planted them on April 11th. Now I've got some root action happening at the tail. When I was doing my reading this year, I read a really good article from the Canadian Dahlia Association, and he was talking about his tubers, and so he says to cut the tail off. And that does a couple of things for you. It allows you to put it in a smaller pot, which can be handy. It also, and what I thought was the most exciting was it allows a novice gardener the ability to know which one is the mother in the fall, because it's the one that's going to be cut off. It also stimulates root growth in early spring. And these are the parts of your dahlia. You've got your tail, and he said you can take between 20 and 50% of the body off. I just took a little bit of the body, and then this was a tail tuber that was growing. It also lets you know whether those tubers are nice and white inside. You see there's a little, I'm not sure if that's dirt or if that's a little bit of rot. So I think I sort of cut that out. But these are your parts. You've got your eyes, your neck, your body, and your tail of your dahlia tuber. And here's just another shot so you can see how they grow, and they're nice and white there. And these ones are a different shape. You can see these ones are more round. It's just a different variety. And we've got some nice eyes growing up here. So after you've trimmed them up and you've got them growing, you plant them with your eye up here, cover them with soil. I've also read there are some growers who only put the tail in the pot in the spring to do their early potting and leave like this much of it showing, that part there, all up out of the dirt to start growing. I've only seen that on one site. You could try it if your pots are too small. I don't know. I have not tried it, but it's always an option. And this is the most important part. Label them, because once they're in the pots, they all look the same. Then this morning, I dug up a couple so I could show you what's happened. I did a bit of an experiment this year. This one it's been so warm outside. I wanted to put them outside. So this one has been outside. It has grown. It's starting to have some growth on it. It has some roots. See, they're there. There's a nice root. Some roots happening here. And this is one I cut. So I wanted to see if the roots did start growing, and they have started growing. They're growing well. There's quite a bit of roots on it. This one was outside, so I did bring it in. There was a couple of nights where it was below 5. I have brought them inside for those nights so they don't get chilled. They are all inside now, and they are all staying inside for the next few days. This pot was an experiment. I did some of the pots I brought inside, and I put them on a boot rack in my bathroom because my bathroom floor is heated. And so these ones have been sitting on a 20.5 degree floor since April 7th. And look at the roots. So heat is very important for root development and to get your plants growing early. And that's something that's interesting to know before you. And then this morning I also did a bit of dividing. I had one small clump that hadn't been divided last year. So you can see I've made a cut here, and you can see the shoots. Some growers say to let them shoot out because they think it might be easier to see where you need to cut them so that you don't cut your eyes out. The person who had given me this clump to store for them asked me to show them how I divided it in the spring. So I've made a cut there, and then I made a little video of doing it. It's only a minute, so we'll watch that, and I'll talk over it now. So here's my clump with my shoots. I'm taking my little cutters in there and getting in and dividing, and just sort of wiggle them and get in there so you can divide them out. Sorry, my hand got in front of the camera, but I only have one clump, so there was no way to do a second shot. And you just want to get it out where you can. You can see there's another shoot coming out of the bottom. All right, and so there I've divided it out, made a smaller clump, and you can see I've got some good root growth on that guy. He's got 2 shoots on him. And I'll plant him up by himself. And then this one, I'm gonna divide it a little bit more. Just get your, go underneath your, you know, get it so you're, see where it's gonna go. Yeah, sometimes if you lift it a bit, you can see how it's gonna break off. And we're gonna cut it in there. These cutters are great. And then that one's coming there. And but you see, I lifted up and I showed one of my shoots came off. And that is one of the risks of doing it in the spring. Some growers say that that they will grow back if those roots show off. And there are other people who aren't happy with the 6 or 7 new tubers you get off each plant to have 6 new plants. If they want like 30 or 40 new plants off of their dahlias, they'll take cuttings in the spring. So those shoots that broke off, I'm going to plant them into some soil and see if the cuttings won't root, and maybe it won't be so bad. So then I'll get 2 extras. So this photo is a photo from Denise Kennedy. She planted hers a little bit earlier. So you can see she's got some nice green growth coming on them. And you plant them when they're about twice this size, or actually when we're going to plant, we want to make sure these are plants from Mexico. They're not, I mean, in Mexico, 10 degrees, it's really cold. People are wearing down jackets and it's cold. So if it's cold for the people of Mexico, it's also cold for the plants. So you want to make sure that your low temperatures are about 10 or above before you plant them out. So the May long weekend, or maybe even a week or 2 later. As with all plants, before you plant them, water the plant, let the water soak into the soil. You're going to give them lots of space. They're going to grow big, especially depending on the variety. You want the hole to be at least twice the size of the tuber. Dahlias are heavy feeders. Give them some manure, some mushroom compost at the bottom of the hole. Plant them deep to support the shoot. You want 5 to 8 centimeters of soil above the root ball. Then you can give them a further 5 to 8 centimeters of mulch. They like to have lots of water. I have an in-ground sprinkler system. Mine do get watered. And you want to stake them. They need to be staked, and you want to stake them when you plant. Actually, stake before you plant. You don't want to risk piercing the tuber with the stake. I use tomato spirals, these guys here. They're easy to put in the ground. They look cool in the garden before the dahlias fill in. And I actually put the stakes out and a day or 2 before I plant, so I can figure out where the plants are going to be and get the spacing right. I quite often will move them, and then the next day I'll come in and I'll dig my holes, and I let my dahlia tubers grow up in the stakes, and I don't have to tie them as much. I just have to check them every week and maybe just spin them a little bit into the thing. So here you can see this is a picture from the middle of June, and my tomato spirals are all up above my dahlias, and I'm winding them in a little bit. I do tie them in as well, but usually I can just do it with winding them in. You mulch them well. I mulch mine with grass clippings as well as the mulch that I put on. It gives them, they like nitrogen, so it gives them lots of food. I trim the bottom branches off. That stops them from going wider, and it gives me bigger flowers at the top of the plant. So if you do all of that, then you'll have these beautiful flowers, and these are just a few of the dahlias that I have grown. I don't have all of them. I did have a dahlia catastrophe a few years ago when I dug them up, and there was frost that night, and I lost all my tubers that year. So I'm slowly rebuilding my collection. I lost my Ferncliff copper, and I just miss it, but that's okay. That's it for dahlias. Now I'm going to talk about cannas. Cannas are not a lily. Cannas are their own genus. They're actually their own family. They belong to the family Cannaceae, and the only genus in that family is Cannas. So they are a big, tall, structural background plant. They'll hide anything you want to hide. They come in lots of colors. This one, this picture isn't as good, but it does show you how tall they get. These ones are above the roof line of my house. And then I've got this other one that's just a nice light green that's also at the back of the garden. This one has bigger flowers. And I do the same thing with my canna tubers. I put them in a box. I sprinkle both of them with sulfur powder and put them in vermiculite. So when I opened up my box, I've put paper in between the different layers. This year was really good. When I store them when I have put them in the basement, if they're too warm, they do start getting roots over the winter, and that can be difficult to get them out. So this way, this year in the garage at the 40 degrees, they stayed nice and cool and didn't develop any roots. So here they are. Keep all of your tubers in the fall because I have always lost some. These are some that I've lost that were no good this year. They're soft. This one, I've lost my marker. I'm gonna go back. This one, the tip is all black. So it would eventually grow, but it's gonna be set back from the rest of them. So I have enough that I'm not gonna bother planting this one because it is gonna be a month behind. This one as well is brown inside, the same as the dahlia that was no good, was brown inside. This one is really bad. It was on top of the vermiculite. It wasn't covered. And you can see it was furry and soft. Like I could have poked my finger right into it. It was kind of disgusting. And it's okay if they don't all live. Like not everything is always going to live every year. This is what you want to see when you take your cannas up out of your box. There's some nice growth, some nice white tips. So those are going to be my new shoots. Here's one that's growing up and out, and another one, so you can just see how they're nice and healthy, and they're gonna shoot up for you from the end of the tuber as well. The cannas are much easier to divide. They just sort of all break off at the middle. But again, I will talk about that when I do the fall talk on how to put them away for the winter. Here I planted one in a pot. This is a 6-inch pot. You notice I've tried to give it some space all around. I lay it flat. Here's another one that's in the pot. This is just a 4-inch pot. So this is a small little tuber is going to be one of those. I think this one's going to be one of the 5, about the light green one. So it's about 5 feet tall. What I do with mine, because they're so big, some of them are so big, I lay them out in my window boxes. So I just lay them out like this to start up, and then I just cover them over with dirt. And I was looking on Gardener's World, and they do the same thing. So they have nice fancier boxes that they have in their greenhouse, but this is what they do. And I've just they were in the window boxes when it was warm, but like I said, they've come in, and then you water them. The watering is very important. It gets them started for the springtime, and leave them out there. They like to be warm as well, so they're coming inside this week. And then when they're this is one that I was ready to plant into the garden. They don't have to be this big, but you'll get a nice plant like that planted in your garden, and it'll get huge. That's all I've got. So I'm gonna go back. I should have made a question page here. Let's see. Go back to number 1. So, questions.
That was great.
That was great, Candace. We have had some questions.
Okay.
One of the questions is from Kimberly. She asks what you do to avoid Japanese beetles.
I get them. We have a Virginia creeper at the far end of the yard, and it attracts them. And so as long as it's there, they go there first. I find that if I go out in the morning, I put them off into water. I kill one and I put it at the top of the flower at the top of the plant. I have no scientific proof for that, but leaving a dead one out there for all of the other ones to see makes me feel happy. And I think it gives me less Japanese beetles. But you live with them.
Picking. Also, Linda asks, do you let the cuts callus over on the dahlias and the cannas before you plant them in the soil?
Nope. Plant them direct. I did the cut and put them directly in the soil. And that's what the article that I read from the Canadian Dahlia Society said to do.
Okay. And then Janet asked early on when you were showing, it was around the slides where you showed the calloused or the cut tuber put in and then you unearthed it. She was asking where the flowers would have been on that cut tuber.
So though these are baby tubers, there would have been, let me see. I'll go. We'll go here. So in here, the stem is here. And then the other tubers are all coming off of the mother tuber. So this, why isn't my mouse is not being happy? These shoots here are coming off of a mother tuber. This is going to be the stem for this year. I get rid of those in the fall. And so the tubers that we have here, there are no, the stem would have been up here, and this is coming off of, the stem would have started about here and gone up. My mouse is not cooperating. It would have been up here somewhere.
Okay, good. And Jane is asking, do you have experience using dry peat moss rather than vermiculite to overwinter in your boxes?
I have used dry peat moss. I used to use that for my cannas especially, and I think I have less growth with the vermiculite than I did with the peat moss, and it's easier. I find it's easier to keep track of how much moisture is in the box.
Okay, and one last one. Karen is asking, she hasn't planted any yet. Is it too late to start now?
Definitely not too late.
How to plant in what soil?
It's definitely not too late to start now. The ones that I put out in the pots that I've started early, start them early now. It's going to be a month before you plant them out. I used last year's potting soil with a bit of compost just to get them started, to get their roots growing, and then just plant them in garden soil. I mean, they want soil rather than triple mix. You know, you're only going to use something out of a bag if you're putting them in a pot, and then you want to add some mushroom or compost to make sure that they get the mycorrhizals in there to feed them.
All right. I think that's it for the questions. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Candace. That was wonderful. It's made me a little braver seeing all your pictures and maybe doing some dahlias. It was always a favorite in my grandmother's garden. Often the pom-poms, but those dinner plate size sure are eye-catching. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining.